Did you know that for LEGO Star Wars The Skywalker Saga back in 2022, TT Games built their own proprietary engine called the NTT engine? The thing turned out to be an absolute nightmare to develop on, and by the time Skywalker Saga shipped, studio leadership had already been having internal debates about whether to abandon it entirely. They didn't wait long to make that call though. Once the Skywalker Saga was out the door, TT Games moved to Unreal Engine 5 for Legacy of the Dark Knight, and the difference is visible almost immediately when you launch the game up. Strategic director Jonathan Smith said directly that this engine switch enabled a much more immersive city than we were ever able to do before, and that the scale of the game is bigger than the other titles we've made in the past. That's not an empty PR statement when you look at what Gotham City looks like in this game versus what it looked like in LEGO Batman 2, DC Superheroes from 2012, which was TT Games' previous open world Gotham. The 2012 version did the job for what it needed to do at that time. The 2026 version looks like a different ambition entirely. The consequence of this engine's ambition is that Legacy of the Dark Knight doesn't support any 8th generation consoles. No PlayStation 4, no Xbox One. This is a game built entirely for current hardware, and that choice was made deliberately because the scale of the world they were building simply wouldn't run on older machines, which I think is the right call. Sometimes you have to cut the old hardware loose and make the thing you actually want to make. Legacy of the Dark Knight is that thing. This is a fun production fact that gives you a sense of the commercial anxiety that's involved in releasing any major title. LEGO Batman Legacy of the Dark Knight was originally scheduled to launch on May 29th, 2026. Then, on March 16th, 2026, TT Games moved the release date forward by a week to May 22nd. That's a small change, but the reason behind it is funny in a very industry way. You know that small little game, Grand Theft Auto 6? Yeah, the biggest and most anticipated game release in years had been scheduled for May 26th, 2026. It then got delayed to November 19th, 2026. And TT Games head of production, Jonathan Smith, speaking at IGN FanFest 2026, said that the studio was really glad to have some space after that delay happened. That's the most politely understated version of saying, we are deeply relieved that the game that would have completely buried our launch week is no longer launching in our launch week. It's a reminder that even a beloved franchise with a passionate fanbase has to think carefully about the competitive landscape. A LEGO Batman game launching in the same week as GTA 6 would not have had a great news cycle. The delay gave Legacy of the Dark Knight a spring window to itself, and the game's commercial performance in that window seems to have confirmed that Smith's relief was well-founded. When you move your release date forward 1 week because GTA 6 moved back 6 months, that's one of the more unusual release scheduling stories in recent gaming history. Also, before you fall asleep, please subscribe to the channel to see more stuff like this that our team is cooking on the usual for you all. In Legacy of the Dark Knight, there's an arcade cabinet with a high-score leaderboard. 5 names appear on that board, each one corresponding to a different live-action Batman actor. Christian Bale, who played Batman in Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy, is second on the board with 9,000 points. He's listed as CHR. Robert Pattinson, who played Batman in Matt Reeves' 2022 film The Batman, is right under him as PAT. Val Kilmer, who played Batman in Joel Schumacher's 1995 Batman Forever, is 4th as Val. Ben Affleck, who played Batman in Batman v Superman and Justice League, sits at the bottom of the board with only 500 points, listed as AFL. And then there's George Clooney, who played Batman in Batman and Robin in 1997. Yeah, George Clooney is not on the board at all. I was kidding. Got you guys. So, the first name on the list is Bat, with a score of 10k. Sorry for the little prank. Let me be clear about what TT Games just did here. They made a LEGO game for kids and hid inside it a ranked list of every major live-action Batman, ordered by, presumably, how good those films were. They put Ben Affleck near the bottom with 500 points. Sad. I loved his Batman. They also didn't put George Clooney on the board. That's intriguing. On this, the Games.gg description is feels like an editorial comment. That is the kindest possible way to describe a scoreboard that leaves George Clooney off of it entirely. Whoever put this in the game, you absolute legend. The game has Alfred Pennyworth, Bruce Wayne's butler, slide across the floor of Wayne Manor in an oversized dress shirt and socks, dancing in the way that Tom Cruise immortalized in the opening of the 1983 film Risky Business. Alfred is answering a call from Bruce at the time. He just happens to be doing it while performing one of the most iconic movie moments of the 1980s in the living room. When you first encounter this sequence early in the story, it lands as both completely unexpected and immediately awesome as a character choice. What makes this funnier is that Alfred in this game, based on the descriptions of his design, is supposed to carry a certain gravitas and dignity. He is the consummate butler after all. And then he turns around, doing the risky business dance in his socks. There's something charming about a game aimed primarily at younger players, hiding a reference to a 1983 Tom Cruise film inside a scene of Alfred doing chores at Wayne Manor. Kids who play this game will probably not get it, or think it's just funny. Adults who recognize the reference will appreciate the specific choice of film to reference. The broader tradition of Alfred being the surprise comic relief in serious Batman media goes back decades. This game is operating in that tradition, but it's executing that tradition for a reference to a film where Tom Cruise's character is essentially a teenage kid who turns his parents' house into a brothel. The specificity of the choice is rather interesting. A generic dancing sequence would have been funny too, but a dancing sequence that specifically recreates risky business, while Alfred is supposed to be running Wayne Manor, is a different and better kind of funny. In Legacy of the Dark Knight, Bruce Wayne slides a business card across a desk in a meeting. As he walks away, an employee at Wayne Tower starts admiring the card with the kind of intensity that only makes sense if you've seen the 2000 film American Psycho.
Nice card. Is that eggshell?
Bruce Wayne? You are not gonna believe this.
The tasteful thickness of it. It even has a watermark.
The employee scrutinizes the craftsmanship, the color, watermark. This is a nearly shot-for-shot recreation of the infamous business card scene from American Psycho, in which Christian Bale's character, Patrick Bateman, becomes increasingly unhinged while comparing business cards with his colleagues.
Look at that subtle off-white coloring. The tasteful thickness of it. Oh my god. It even has a watermark.
Time to peel some layers off of this Easter egg. Layer 1 of this reference. It's a funny and well-executed recreation of one of the most quoted scenes in American Psycho. And even if you don't know the film, the employee's disproportionate obsession with a business card is just funny. Layer 2. Christian Bale, who starred in American Psycho as Patrick Bateman, also played Batman in Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy. So the game is doing a scene from a Christian Bale movie in a Batman game, featuring a different Bruce Wayne who's also connected to Christian Bale through the arcade cabinet Easter egg that we already discussed. Layer 3. Both Patrick Bateman and Bruce Wayne are wealthy men who live double lives. One secretly violent, one secretly hectic, which makes the American Psycho reference land as something more than a simple joke. The fact that this reference appears in a LEGO game is the final layer. LEGO Batman Legacy of the Dark Knight is rated for all ages. American Psycho is rated R and contains content that is extremely not for all ages. Someone at TT Games decided to include a reference to this particular film in this great game, and they got away with it because the actual content of the recreated scene involves nothing more than a business card and an employee saying nice things about its presentation. It's technically appropriate for children. It's also unmistakable for adults. I mean, that's a real accomplishment in game design. During the section of Legacy of the Dark Knight that covers Batman's training with the League of Shadows, Ra's al Ghul delivers a speech that Batman fans and film fans of a certain vintage will recognize from a completely different source. Ra's quotes, nearly word for word, the very particular set of skills speech that Liam Neeson's character Brian Mills delivers in a phone call in the 2008 thriller Taken. This is one of the most quoted movie monologues of the last 20 years, widely shared as a meme and parodied endlessly. In the LEGO Batman game, it's coming out of Ra's al Ghul's mouth.
I have a particular set of skills. a very particular set of skills.
If you're not immediately smiling at this, here's the specific reason you should be. In Batman Begins, the 2005 Christopher Nolan film, Ra's al Ghul was played by Liam Neeson. In Taken, which was released 3 years after Batman Begins, Liam Neeson played Brian Mills, a retired CIA operative who gives one of cinema's most intense phone threats. So, TT Games has put the Taken speech in the mouth of Ra's al Ghul because Ra's al Ghul and the man who delivered the Taken speech in real life are the same person. The reference makes no sense in the Batman universe, but somehow it makes perfect sense in the Liam Neeson universe. Absolute cinema. This kind of stuff, where the joke only works if you know the actor's filmography and not just the character, is a very specific kind of Easter egg. It doesn't reference the Batman mythology at all. It references the career of the actor who played a Batman character in one specific film. For players who know both references, the joke lands as a delightfully absurd piece of cross-IP comedy. For players who don't know either reference, Ra's just says something forceful before a fight sequence, which also works on its own terms, I guess. That's a good Easter egg. It adds value for people who get it, without detracting from people who don't. This one is an example of TT Games doing something really clever with a background detail. In Batmite's store, there's a phone booth available for purchase. The price is 2,002 studs. You might think that's just a number, and you would be wrong. That price tag is doing 3 separate jokes at the same time. Lay it so that different audiences will catch different levels of it. Reference 1. Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. The 1989 science fiction comedy featured 2 teenagers who travel through time in a phone booth. A phone booth connected to the number 2002 via a stretch would gesture at the Bill and Ted's movie, as the number they use to travel in time is 2002. Reference 2. Phone Booth is a 2002 thriller film in which Colin Farrell's character is trapped in a phone booth by a sniper. The 2002 in the price tag directly references the year the film was released. Reference 3, and this is the one that makes the whole thing complete. Colin Farrell played the Penguin in Matt Reeves' 2022 film The Batman. The Penguin is a character in the game Legacy of the Dark Knight, so a phone booth in the Batmite store in a Batman game is priced at 2002, referencing a 2002 film starring a man who played the Penguin in a different Batman property. The Games.gg site calls this 3 references layered into a single price tag, and that's accurate. The joke works on multiple levels, rewards different levels of film knowledge, and doesn't give out much if you don't know ball. You look at the price, you might think nothing, or you might think, wait, Colin Farrell was in Phone Booth in 2002, and Colin Farrell played the Penguin, so is this phone booth priced at 2002 as a reference to that? And then you feel like a detective, which is appropriate given the game you're playing. The developers were clearly cooking up good stuff with the store item pricing. There's a section of Legacy of the Dark Knight set in the Flugelheim Museum, and it's essentially a celebration of Batman's comic book history done up in Lego brick form. The name Flugelheim itself is a reference to the Flugelheim Museum that appears in the 1989 Tim Burton Batman film, where the Joker poisons an exhibit with a Smilex-laced aerosol spray. That's already one reference before you've even walked inside. Inside the museum, TT Games has loaded the exhibits with DC history. There's a shard of kryptonite on display, which Batman approaches and says, "What a beautiful crystal. Something about it is so alien." There's a Green Lantern's lantern. There's Wonder Woman's lasso of truth. A framed copy of Detective Comics issue 27 hangs on the wall, though in the game's version of it, the Grey Ghost appears on the cover instead of Batman, which is itself a reference to a character from Batman, the animated series. A painting depicts Bill Finger and Bob Kane, the creators of Batman, standing together. Next to that painting is a copy of Frank Miller's The Dark Knight Returns, displaying the iconic lightning bolt cover. The Grey Ghost detail is specifically worth noting, because the Grey Ghost was a fictional TV hero who inspired Bruce Wayne to become Batman in the animated series episode Beware the Grey Ghost. The museum's version of Detective Comics 27 has been retroactively revised in this game's universe to show the fictional hero who inspired Batman, rather than Batman himself. That's a very specific piece of lore awareness that only lands if you know the animated series well. The museum also contains a painting of Frank Miller and Alan Moore. two of the most important Batman writers in comics history, reimagined as lawyers with a joint practice. Given that Miller wrote The Dark Knight Returns and Moore wrote The Killing Joke, putting them in a crime-adjacent legal profession is exactly the kind of joke these two men would either love or resent, possibly both. This is one of my favourites on the entire list, and it requires some background before it lands. In August 2024, Michael Caine, who played Alfred Pennyworth in Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy, posted a tweet. The tweet read, "Why do we fall? So we can learn to pick ourselves up. Batman Begin." Not Batman Begins. Batman Begin. He dropped the S from the title of one of his own films. The internet, as the internet does, found this profoundly funny and never forgot it. The typo became a small but enduring piece of online lore about a beloved actor. In Legacy of the Dark Knight, Alfred can recite this tweet in the Batcave.
Why did we fall, sir? So that we can learn to pick ourselves up. Batman Begin.
The full text, with the missing S from Batman Begins, has been put into the game as a spoken line of dialogue by the game's version of Alfred. The developers were, to use the Kotaku website description, extremely online, and they clearly made a deliberate decision to preserve Michael Caine's typo as a canonical piece of Batman lore in this game universe. Alfred says Batman Begin, and it's preserved as a small monument to a very specific moment from August 2024. The deeper joke is that "Why do we fall? So we can learn to pick ourselves up" is one of the most iconic lines from Batman Begins, delivered by Michael Caine as Alfred.
Why do we fall, sir? So that we can learn to pick ourselves up.
It's a meaningful piece of Batman mythology, and it's now been partially ruined, or significantly improved, depending on your perspective, by the fact that the man who said it originally couldn't spell the name of the film it came from when he posted about it on Twitter. Or the fact that the poor old guy forgot to put a hyphen after the quote. TT Games saw that, kept it, and made Alfred say it wrong as a joke in a video game. Whoever approved that decision at TT Games deserves some form of commendation. Catwoman is a playable character in Legacy of the Dark Knight. She's voiced and designed to represent various iterations of the character across Batman's history. What she's not is Halle Berry's version of Catwoman from the 2004 film Catwoman, which is, by general critical consensus, a fairly disastrous film that has nothing to do with the Batman mythology and everything to do with a studio making a spin-off without much care for the source material. TT Games appears to be aware of this gap and has chosen to acknowledge it for environmental storytelling. Throughout Gotham City in Legacy of the Dark Knight, you can find missing cat posters advertising for a lost cat named Halle Berry. This is a wordplay of Halle Berry and Perry, which is either a reference to Katy Perry's Purr fragrance or just the sound cats make. Probably both. The joke is that Halle Berry's Catwoman is so absent from the game's representation of the character that she's been reduced to a missing cat poster. She's not here, nor did she make it. There's just a poster asking if anyone has seen her. The Games.gg site describes these posters as being everywhere, making the gag impossible to miss once you know what you're looking at, which is the right way to execute a running joke. You can encounter it once and get a small smile, or you can start to notice it throughout the city and appreciate the commitment to the bit. This is the kind of environmental humour that turns a good open world into an engaging one. You're not just walking for a static backdrop, you're in a space that has opinions and expresses them secretly in a way that rewards attention. During the Penguin boss fight in Legacy of the Dark Knight, the Penguin shouts, "So anyway, I started blasting." This is a reference to the viral scene from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, the comedy series that's run since 2005. In the scene, Danny DeVito's character Frank Reynolds describes his response to a threat by saying he started blasting a gun. The line became a very popular meme, used in contexts where someone's response to a problem was immediate and overwhelming force. Layer 1 of this Easter egg. It's a very funny meme reference that lands as comedy, even if you only know the meme and not the show. The Penguin just starts blasting in a Lego game, and the absurdity works on a surface level. Layer 2. Danny DeVito, who plays Frank Reynolds in It's Always Sunny, also played the Penguin in Tim Burton's Batman Returns in 1992. The Penguin in Legacy of the Dark Knight is specifically modelled on the Danny DeVito version of the character, based on reports that the character's skin takes inspiration from the Batman Returns Batman. So, when this Penguin shouts a Danny DeVito line, it's a character based on Danny DeVito shouting something his real-world counterpart became famous for saying in a completely different production. Leofrey is a character known for making terrible decisions and causing chaos everywhere he goes. The Penguin in Batman Returns is a character known for making terrible decisions and causing chaos everywhere he goes. Danny DeVito essentially plays the same kind of chaotic menace in both, just in different genres. Putting Frank's most famous line in the Penguin's mouth is either a very good accident or a very deliberate choice to acknowledge the overlap between the two characters in DeVito's filmography. Kotaku describes it as going a layer deeper and coming full circle. Both of those phrases work well here. Batmite is a character from Batman comics who's essentially a fifth-dimensional imp with a Batman obsession, somewhere between a superfan and a reality-warping nuisance. In Legacy of the Dark Knight, he runs the shop where players can purchase suits and Batcave decorations, which is a perfectly sensible use of a character whose entire deal is that he loves Batman more than anything else. He has a lot of dialogue in the shop, and most of it is strange and funny in the way that Batmite dialogue is supposed to be. One of his lines is a direct reference to Resident Evil 4's Merchant, one of the most beloved and quoted characters in gaming. The Resident Evil 4 Merchant, with his purple bandana and his raspy voice, opens every interaction with, "What are you buying?" It's a line that's been celebrated and memed for nearly 20 years. In Legacy of the Dark Knight, Batmite adopts a low, raspy voice and begins to say, "What are you buying?" before stopping himself and saying it's hard on his vocal cords, and he has no idea how the merchant does it. Then he returns to his normal voice and continues with the transaction.
What are you buying? Hang on. Phew, that one's hard on the vocal cords. No idea how he does it.
This reference works on several layers simultaneously. The obvious one is that it's a funny gaming in-joke for players who have spent time with RE4. The less obvious one is that Batmite explicitly fails to maintain the voice, acknowledging the difficulty of doing the impression rather than just doing it straight. This makes the reference feel more self-aware and less like a simple shout-out. The shopkeeper in your Batman game tried to do the shopkeeper voice from a Capcom survival horror game and found it physically demanding. Poor guy. Also, Batmite's design in this scene apparently includes a purple, reminiscent suit of the RE4 merchant's look, which is an additional visual layer on top of the dialogue joke. TT Games put real effort into this one. Carmine Falcone, the Gotham crime boss whose history of the Wayne family runs through several of the most important Batman stories ever told, has his hideout in an underwater location in Legacy of the Dark Knight. This is already an interesting design choice. What makes it specifically funny is what TT Games put inside that underwater area once they had established that it existed. While exploring the space below Falcone's Iceberg Lounge section, players can find, built entirely in Lego brick form, the Pineapple House belonging to SpongeBob SquarePants, and the Easter Island Head House belonging to Squidward Tentacles. This is a reference to SpongeBob SquarePants, which is a cartoon about a sea sponge who lives underwater in a town called Bikini Bottom. SpongeBob's Pineapple House and Squidward's Easter Island Head are among the most recognizable fictional architectural structures in children's television history. Putting them in a Lego Batman game inside a crime boss's underwater base is a choice that requires no justification, beyond the fact that it's just extremely funny. A Batman enemy's villain headquarters, which happens to be in the same neighborhood as SpongeBob and Squidward. What I find charming about this Easter egg is how little it tries to connect itself to anything in Batman lore. There's no reason for SpongeBob's house to be here. There's no thematic link between Carmine Falcone and Bikini Bottom either. TT Games just built it because an underwater section of a crime boss's base is exactly the kind of place where you would put SpongeBob's house, I guess. If you were the kind of developer who enjoys surprising your players, Legacy of the Dark Knight is very clearly a game made by developers who enjoy surprising their players. The SpongeBob reference was also one of the first Easter eggs to go viral on social media after Early Access launched on May 19th, which tracks. The Poison Ivy boss fight in Legacy of the Dark Knight involves a giant plant creature called a snapdragon that has two separate heads. During the mid-fight sequence, as Batman and Robin both jump away to throw batarangs, the two heads of the snapdragon snap at each other and look around the room. The way they move, the specific way they scan the space between them, the way their heads trace lines of attention across the environment, is a recreation of the Jurassic Park kitchen scene. If you know the very famous 1993 Spielberg film, you know the scene. Two velociraptors enter the kitchen of the Jurassic Park Visitor Center, hunting Tim and Lex Murphy, who are hiding behind the counters. This scene is one of the most tense sequences in blockbuster cinema of that decade, memorable for how the raptors' intelligence is conveyed through their methodical searching of the space. They're not just running through the kitchen, they're thinking, tracking, looking. The scene has been parodied and referenced countless times in the 30+ years since the film came out. TT Games recreating this in a LEGO Batman game, not through human or humanoid characters, but through the two heads of a mutant plant creature during a superhero boss fight, is an inspired choice of vehicle for the reference. The Snapdragon's dual heads map naturally onto the dual raptors. The searching movement makes sense for a monster that doesn't immediately know where its targets went. The reference lands as both a specific joke for Jurassic Park fans, and as a visually interesting beat in the boss fight for players who don't catch the reference at all. Screen Rant describes it as frame for frame, and based on player descriptions of the sequence, that seems accurate. Five Nights at Freddy's is a horror game series about surviving the night shift at a pizza restaurant, while animatronic animal mascots try to catch and stuff you into a suit. It's been a cultural phenomenon since 2014, generated many sequels, a fan base of millions, and a 2023 film adaptation. It's not, on any surface reading, a property you would expect to encounter inside a LEGO Batman game, and yet, during one of Legacy of the Dark Knight's main missions, Batman stumbles upon an animatronic bear that wants to eat him. The bear is threatening and aggressive in the way that Freddy Fazbear and his associated animatronic crew are aggressive in the games. Mechanical menace, wrong place, and completely out of nowhere. The reference was captured and shared virally on Twitter by Culture Crave during early access, and it spread fast because the juxtaposition is funny. Batman, the Dark Knight, the world's greatest detective, has stopped mid-adventure to deal with a malfunctioning children's party animatronic. What I find interesting about this Easter egg, beyond its comedic value, is the genre distance it covers. FNAF is a horror property. LEGO Batman is a kid's action-adventure. The animatronic bear brings a tiny sliver of FNAF's threatening energy into a space where children are the target audience. And TT Games does it for a moment of physical comedy rather than actual horror. Batman confronts the bear and deals with it as an obstacle rather than a genuine threat. The reference is there, the joke lands, and nobody gets scared. That's a careful piece of tonal calibration in a moment that easily could have gone wrong. After tracking down Black Mask in Legacy of the Dark Knight and disabling his security systems, there's a sequence in which Batman roughs up Black Mask's car. The way this sequence is structured and animated is a direct recreation of the bonus stage from Street Fighter II, the 1991 fighting game by Capcom. In Street Fighter II's bonus stage, the player uses their chosen fighter to destroy a stationary car within a time limit to earn bonus points. It was one of the most memorable and widely played bonus stages in arcade gaming history, parodied and referenced endlessly in the decades since. The connection between Batman and car destruction is already established in the Arkham games, where Batman can smash Riddler trophies and environmental objects with his combat animations. But the Street Fighter II bonus stage had a specific rhythm and structure to it. A single car standing in the middle of the frame while a fighter attacks it systematically. That Legacy of the Dark Knight's Black Mask sequence apparently replicates. GameSpot's list of Easter eggs specifically identifies this as the Street Fighter II callback, and given how specific the visual language of that bonus stage is, it's a reference that players who know the original game would likely catch on sight. There's also a Capcom Easter egg in a DC game, which is not the most obvious corporate crossover to find in the middle of a Batman adventure. LEGO Batman's relationship with video game history has been noted in multiple Easter egg roundups, and the Resident Evil 4 merchant reference and the Street Fighter 2 bonus stage both demonstrate that TT Games was going wide in their reference pool, rather than staying narrow within DC and Batman history. That decision to reach into gaming history as well as film and television history is what makes the Easter egg density of Legacy of the Dark Knight feel comprehensive rather than just thorough. I Think You Should Leave with Tom Robinson is a Netflix sketch comedy show that's produced some of the most aggressively quoted moments in internet comedy culture since its debut in 2019. One of its recurring sketches involves Tim Robinson's character attempting to order a ridiculous amount of food at a drive-thru in hopes that the person in front of him will pay for all of it. The sketch's punchline escalates to absurdity in the specific way that the show's best moments do. In Legacy of the Dark Knight, there's a diner scene in which a customer asks the waiter if there are any food challenges on the menu. The waiter responds that if the customer can eat 55 burgers, 55 shakes, and 55 tacos, they'll be asked to leave. This is a direct reference to the I Think You Should Leave sketch, in which the food order escalates to a similarly absurd quantity. The numbers and the structure of the reference, the challenge with a specific consequence of being removed from the establishment, mirror the sketch closely enough to be unmistakable if you know it. There's something delightful about I Think You Should Leave appearing in a LEGO Batman game. Tim Robinson's humour is specific, strange, and deliberately awkward in a way that doesn't immediately map onto mainstream family entertainment. The diner scene in Legacy of the Dark Knight has to carry the reference without replicating the actual content of the sketch, which involves more adult absurdity than a LEGO game can accommodate. What TT Games managed to extract from the sketch, the food challenge quantity escalation of the specific consequence of being asked to leave, works as a family-friendly version of the same joke without losing what makes the original funny. That's a good adaptation of a reference. The Court of Owls is one of the most significant additions to Batman's mythology in recent comic book history. Introduced in Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo's New 52 Batman run, beginning in 2011. The Court is a secret criminal organization composed of Gotham's most powerful and wealthy citizens, running the city from the shadows for centuries, and their presence in Batman's life is one of the most unsettling revelations in modern Batman storytelling, because it means Gotham's corruption runs deeper and older than Bruce Wayne can easily fix. They represent systemic rot rather than individual villainy. The Court of Owls doesn't appear as active antagonists in Legacy of the Dark Knight's main story. They're not a primary villain. What they are, instead, is an environmental presence, a suggestion of something watching from the background of Gotham in ways you have to look for rather than encounter directly. Throughout the game world, graffiti mentions the Court of Owls. A high fashion store contains a flyer that reads, "Your secret friend, who?" with a picture of an owl. That particular piece of ambient advertising has the exact unsettling undertone of the Court's actual comics presence, where their influence is everywhere once you know what to look for, but invisible if you don't. The detail that elevates this Easter egg from good to excellent is the collectible trophies. Scattered around Gotham are trophies shaped like Court of Owl members. You can find them, collect them, and they're described by the Bam Smack Pow write-up as potentially the creepiest Easter egg in the game. The trophies exist in the same physical space as the player, which means the Court of Owls is not just referenced in the game's world, but has objects in the world that you interact with. They left trophies. Like the court itself, the trophies are everywhere once you start looking. That's excellent environmental design applied to a piece of comic book mythology. Ace Chemical Plant is one of the most mythologically significant locations in Batman's entire history. In the most famous versions of the Joker's origin story, particularly the one told in Alan Moore's The Killing Joke, the future Joker falls into a vat of chemicals at Ace Chemicals during a robbery, and the chemicals transform him into the Clown Prince of Crime. Ace Chemicals is where the Joker was born. It's sacred ground in the worst possible way. In Legacy of the Dark Knight, there's a main story mission that takes you inside Ace Chemical, which is already an Easter egg in the sense that you're visiting a deeply meaningful location. But TT Games hid something extra inside the building for players willing to look. The level contains 2 hidden areas that require puzzle solving to access. The first hidden area contains a red table with a teapot and 2 teacups on top. The second hidden area contains many teddy bears sitting around in what the Bam Smack Pow description calls a tea party, which Batman can participate in. There's also an unlockable Batcave prop that specifically references Jervis Tetch, which is the real name of the Mad Hatter. Combine the teapot, the teacups, the teddy bear tea party, and the named prop, and the picture becomes clear. The Mad Hatter was using Ace Chemicals as his personal hideout. The Mad Hatter doesn't appear as a boss or story character in Legacy of the Dark Knight, as far as we know. His presence in the game is entirely environmental, a hidden story told through 2 secret rooms and a Batcave prop. For players who find all 3 elements, the conclusion is not announced or explained. You're expected to connect the dots yourself. A teapot in a chemical plant, plus a bear tea party in a back room, plus a Jervis Tetch named prop, equals the Mad Hatter lived here. That's confident environmental storytelling from a development team that trusted players to be paying attention. Batman Arkham Asylum, released in 2009 by Rocksteady Studios, contained what became one of the most celebrated Easter eggs in gaming history. Hidden in the Warden's office behind a false wall was a full room displaying blueprints for Arkham City, the sequel that wasn't announced at the time. The room was discovered months after the game launched, rewarding players who explored thoroughly with a glimpse of the game's future. Rocksteady later confirmed the hidden room intentionally. It became a famous example of how to hide sequel information inside a finished product. Legacy of the Dark Knight references this specific Easter egg in multiple ways. The Arkham City blueprints that were hidden in Arkham Asylum appear in Legacy of the Dark Knight as a findable item in the Batcave, where they can be displayed as a prop. That's the first reference. The second is a dialogue line available when Batman is in the relevant area. He can laugh at the idea of Arkham City and say, "It'll never catch on," which is a joke about the somewhat unusual premise of turning an entire section of Gotham into a super prison for criminals. The third is Batman having a line about how no one keeps secrets from him, which the gamer write-up reads as the fact that nobody knew the Arkham City secret room existed until someone found it, despite Batman allegedly being the world's greatest detective. This is a game within a game. Legacy of the Dark Knight is making jokes about a 2009 Batman game's Easter egg within a 2026 game. The developers had clearly played Arkham Asylum, appreciated the hidden room, and decided to reference it while also poking fun at the implausibility of Batman missing a secret room in a building he presumably investigates regularly. The entire bit is dense with affection for the Arkham games, while simultaneously not taking itself too seriously, which is the correct tone for a LEGO game to take towards its source material. Also, players can decorate the Batcave with a full diorama of Arkham Asylum, as seen in the 2009 game, which is an additional layer of tribute. Legacy of the Dark Knight opens its engagement with the 1966 Batman television series, through 2 references that both require you to know the specific comedic sensibility of that show to fully appreciate. The first one involves a character sprinting through a cutscene, holding a sparking bomb above his head. This is a recreation of one of the most famous scenes from Batman, the movie from 1966, in which Adam West's Batman cannot find a safe place to dispose of a bomb because every location he tries contains nuns, a baby carriage, a brass band, or a family of ducks. The scene is absurd, and beloved as a piece of slapstick comedy writing. The second 1966 reference comes in Chapter 2, when shark-repellent bat spray appears as a weapon or item. This is also from the 1966 film, in which Batman keeps a variety of bat-themed chemical repellents in his utility belt for repelling different types of marine life, including sharks. The shark repellent sequence in the film involves Batman dangling from a rope over the ocean while a rubber shark bites his leg, and he sprays it with shark repellent bat spray until it falls off. The sequence has been celebrated for 60 years as an example of how the 1966 version of Batman committed completely to its campy premise with total sincerity. What both of these references share is an embrace of the 1966 Batman's tone, without condescension. Legacy of the Dark Knight is not mocking the Adam West version. It includes it alongside the Nolan Batman and the Matt Reeves Batman, the Tim Burton Batman, and all the other versions the game draws from. The 1966 Batman is treated as a legitimate and worthy part of the legacy, which the game's full title explicitly invokes. That willingness to put the shark repellent bat spray in the same game as references to The Dark Knight and Batman Begins says something important about how TT Games understands the character's history. All of it counts. Well, the ducks count too. In the lead up to the release of the 2022 DCEU film Black Adam, Dwayne Johnson used the phrase, "The hierarchy of power in the DC universe is about to change," extensively in promotional materials. The phrase was said in trailers, in interviews, and in marketing content. It became associated with the film's promotional campaign so strongly that even people who hadn't seen Black Adam knew the line. The film was released. The hierarchy of power in the DC universe did not significantly change, and the film's reception was mixed. In Legacy of the Dark Knight, whenever Batman sits on a throne, there's a random chance he'll say, "The hierarchy of power in Gotham is about to change." This is a direct reference to Dwayne Johnson's Black Adam promotional line, adapted from the DC Universe scale to just Gotham City, which is a funny deflation of the original's grandeur. The original line was about reshaping the entire DC Universe's power structure. Batman's version is about local Gotham politics while he's sitting in a chair. The game has taken a phrase that was used to suggest cosmic consequence, and applied it to Batman before doing something mundane. The context is also worth noting. Black Adam was a DCEU property. Legacy of the Dark Knight is a DCU-adjacent game, set in the new creative direction under James Gunn and Peter Safran. The DCEU projects are part of a creative era that the new DCU was built to replace. Legacy of the Dark Knight also makes a joke about the Joker's look in 2016 Suicide Squad, which is another DCEU-era property. The game is, among other things, gently poking fun at the previous regime, and it does so through Batman sitting on a chair and quoting Dwayne Johnson's promotional lines at reduced scope. In my opinion, this is very specific and very funny. Batmite's store in Legacy of the Dark Knight is a strange and charming place, which is appropriate for a character who's strange and charming by design. Among its various details is a wall of anime posters. The posters are for recognizable and iconic anime series, which the GameSpot Easter Egg Roundup lists as including One Piece, Akira, Sailor Moon, Dragon Ball, and Avatar: The Last Airbender. Although Avatar is American animation rather than a Japanese anime, which either suggests TT Games counts it anyway, or that someone on the team is technically imprecise about this category. What makes this Easter egg specific and funny rather than just a wall of anime references is the design of the posters. In each one, Batmite has replaced the original protagonist. He's standing where Luffy stands on the One Piece poster. He's where Akira's characters are on the Akira poster. He's presumably where Goku stands on the Dragon Ball poster. Batmite has inserted himself into the iconography of some of the most celebrated animated works in the medium's history, which is completely consistent with the character's personality. Batmite, in the comics, often inserts himself into situations he has no business being in, because he's a superfan who can't contain his enthusiasm. The joke here is character appropriate in a way that not every Easter egg achieves. It would be easy to just hang anime posters on the wall as a generic reference. Making Batmite the central figure in each poster transforms the reference from a simple nod into a piece of character comedy. He didn't just buy anime posters for his shop, he replaced the protagonists with himself. Because of course he did. Of course, a fifth-dimensional entity with a Batman obsession and a novelty shop has commissioned custom anime posters in which he is the main character. The writers understood the character and used the Easter egg as a vehicle for characterization, rather than just a reference drop. They made him a weeb. Cute. Legacy of the Dark Knight features an impressive roster of Batman villains as actual story characters, including the Joker, the Penguin, Poison Ivy, Ra's al Ghul, Bane, Two-Face, Mr. Freeze, Firefly, the Riddler, and the Condiment King, among others. That is a strong lineup. But Batman has one of the deepest rogues galleries in all of the comics, and there are notable characters who didn't make the cut as active story participants. TT Games found a way to honor them anyway, by turning Gotham City streets into a tribute wall. Hugo Strange, the psychologist and long-running Batman antagonist, appears on multiple billboards throughout the city. The ventriloquist and Scarface, the criminal duo consisting of a meek man and his threatening puppet, have billboards advertising their upcoming show. Man-Bat, whose real name is Kirk Langstrom, has a poster promoting a musical event in Gotham. Thomas Elliot, whose villainous alter ego is Hush, has references to his Hush persona hidden across the city. Gentleman Ghost, the spectral Victorian villain who appeared in Batman, The Brave and the Bold, gets a graffiti mention. Basil Karlo, whose villainous alter ego is Clayface, has both a Batcave prop and a poster advertising a movie called The Terror, which is apt given that Basil Karlo's origin in the comics involves him being an actor driven to murder by the remake of a horror film he starred in. Two more. Cue-Ball, a small-time villain who leads the Pool Hall gang, has a pool hall named Cue-Ball visible on the Gotham skyline. Dragon Cat, a karate instructor villain, has marketing for his dojo, and Phantasm, best known as the antagonist of the 1993 animated film Batman, Mask of the Phantasm, gets multiple references, including a billboard for a fictional musical called The Phantasm of the Opera. These are not household names, even among Batman fans. Finding a reference to the ventriloquist in a LEGO game requires someone at TT Games to have specifically gone looking for mid-tier Batman villains who deserved a nod. That's devotion to the source material at a level beyond what most licensed games attempt. Matt Berry is a British actor and comedian, known primarily for his extraordinarily distinctive voice, which sounds like someone designed a voice in a laboratory with the specific goal of making it as theatrical and imperious as possible. His delivery is natural comedy. He appeared in The IT Crowd, What We Do in the Shadows, and Garth Marenghi's Dark Place, among many other things. He's not a person you'd immediately think of when imagining who should voice the physically intimidating, mask-wearing, Gotham-breaking Bane. That's exactly why the casting works. During the game's reveal at Gamescom's opening night, live on August 19, 2025, Matt Berry was announced as the voice of Bane. The character's performance is described as inspired by Tom Hardy's voice performance in The Dark Knight Rises, where Hardy played Bane with a distinctive, muffled, theatrical vocal quality that became one of the most memed aspects of the film, putting Matt Berry in the role, a man who delivers everything with theatrical authority and an inherent comedic undercurrent, alongside inspiration from Tom Hardy's Bane, produces a character whose voice is both convincing as a threat and inherently funny to anyone who knows Matt Berry's work. The game also includes a Robin sequence in Harley's Circus, where he must dodge rolling barrels on what is described as a Nintendo-style ramp. This is a Donkey Kong reference, specifically to the original 1981 arcade game, where the player must dodge rolling barrels while climbing to reach Donkey Kong. During this sequence, Two-Face appears and calls out, "How would you like to see a barrel roll?" This is a reference to Star Fox 64, where Peppy Hare repeatedly tells the player to do a barrel roll. TT Games put a Donkey Kong obstacle course in a Batman game, and then interrupted it with the most famous line from a Nintendo spaceflight shooter. That's two Nintendo references in one Batman level, and both of them land. Gotham City streets, theaters, and buildings in Legacy of the Dark Knight are plastered with movie posters and show advertisements. A significant portion of these posters references real films with slight name and image adjustments to sidestep copyright concerns while making the source unmistakable. Jack Nicholson played the Joker in Tim Burton's 1989 Batman film. Jack Nicholson also starred in Stanley Kubrick's 1980 horror film The Shining, where he played a man who goes violently insane in an isolated hotel. Legacy of the Dark Knight has a movie poster in Gotham for a film called The Smiling, using visual design that references The Shining's iconography, while renaming it with a word associated with the Joker's permanent grin. This is not a random choice of film to reference. It's a film associated with the specific actor who played the Joker, renamed with a word connected to the Joker's defining physical characteristic, placed in a game about Batman. The shining becomes the smiling, and the joke works on 3 levels simultaneously. It's a funny parody title. It references an important Batman film actor, and it connects to the Joker's iconography through the smile. Similarly, a Dune poster appears with a slightly altered name, but the instantly recognizable font and visual design of Denis Villeneuve's film series. A poster referencing the Iron Giant appears as the Metallic Giant. Outside Gotham's theatre, players can spot a poster for Indiana Jones and one for Police Academy. Inside the museum, there's a poster for the Jonah Hex film, which is itself a DC property. A billboard promotes a musical called Les Minifigures, which is a Lego brand pun on Les Miserables. During a main mission set in a museum, the Flintstones' iconic Stone Age car appears as a museum exhibit. A police station has signage that reads Law and Order instead of Law and Order. The breadth of these references, from Kubrick horror to animated Hanna-Barbera cartoons to 1990s legal procedural television, suggests the TT Games team was just going through their collective cultural memory and asking what could be Legoified and placed in Gotham. The answer was apparently most of it. Here's a production fact that became its own news story during launch week. The credits for Legacy of the Dark Knight include Rocksteady Studios, the developer responsible for the Batman Arkham series. This was reported by Kotaku on May 18, 2026, before the game had officially launched, and it confirmed something that some players had suspected from the game's announced combat system. Rocksteady had a hand in what TT Games was building. The relationship makes intuitive sense. TT Games wanted a combat system that, in their own description, delivers the distinctive Batman fighting experience, but in a fun way that feels true to the LEGO brand. The Arkham series had built the most celebrated Batman combat system in gaming history over the course of 4 games released between 2009 and 2015. If you're going to build a new Batman combat system that aims to feel like the Arkham games while being accessible to the LEGO game's broader audience, consulting the people who built the Arkham combat system is the logical step. What TT Games actually took from Rocksteady's contribution is not publicly documented in detail. The adaptation resulted in a free-flow combat system that has been specifically compared to the Arkham series by multiple reviewers and previews. The Xbox Wire developer blog describes it as inspiring the new combat, while being adapted to be more approachable, encouraging the use of abilities, gadgets, batarangs, and environmental actions, rather than demanding the technical precision that the Arkham games required. Rocksteady being in the credits is a form of Easter egg in itself. One of the most celebrated studios in the history of the characters' games helped build the version of Batman combat you're using in a LEGO game. The worlds collided, and the collision was apparently productive. Legacy of the Dark Knight takes place entirely within Gotham City. The world doesn't extend to Metropolis, Central City, or any of the other landmark DC locations, but TT Games found a way to acknowledge the broader DC universe through references scattered throughout Gotham's environment, making the city feel like it exists in a larger world, even when the playable area never leaves it. The most elegant of these references comes through dialogue rather than environment. At some point during the game, Batman and Nightwing are working together, and Batman says to his apprentice, "Have you thought about patrolling Bloodhaven? I'm sure they'd appreciate the help." In the comics, Dick Grayson, who is Nightwing, eventually leaves Gotham and becomes the protector of Bloodhaven, a city nearby with its own crime problem. Batman's line in Legacy of the Dark Knight is essentially pointing Nightwing towards his canonical future, without stating it directly. It's a piece of foreshadowing that only lands if you know the comic's continuity. On the environmental side, a Keystone Industries factory is visible in Gotham, referencing Keystone City, the home of the Flash. A Metro Steel factory appears, which the game explains is short for Metropolis Steel, connecting Gotham to Superman City via an industrial property. The billboard references Smallville and includes the phrase, "Gow and Millers," which references Alfred Gow and Miles Miller, the original showrunners of the Smallville television series. That's a reference within a reference. Nice. The billboard for Superman's hometown also credits the people who made the most famous live-action Smallville adaptation. The depth of the research TT Games did on its source material is consistently impressive throughout the game world. The Legacy of the Dark Knight's character skin system goes deeper than simply offering different costume designs. The game includes skins based on the likeness of real actors who have played Batman characters in live-action productions, and the attention to accuracy in these skins was a confirmed design priority from early in development. Jim Lee, as DC Comics president, described the game as a love letter to Batman's history, and the actor likeness skins are a significant part of how that love letter is addressed to the film versions of the character specifically. Michelle Pfeiffer's version of Catwoman from Batman Returns in 1992 is represented in the game for a skin that captures her appearance from the film. Danny DeVito's Penguin from the same film is similarly represented, which makes the It's Always Sunny reference even more layered, because the character skin is literally modelled on Danny DeVito's face. Heath Ledger's Joker from The Dark Knight in 2008 appears as a skin option. Jeffrey Wright's Jim Gordon from Matt Reeves' The Batman in 2022 is available as a Gordon skin. These are real, specific people whose performances have been translated into Lego brick minifigure form. The Batsuit collection, which players can display in the Batcave alongside various Batmobile versions, extends this actor and film coverage across the game's full scope. There are reportedly dozens of skins representing different eras of the character, from early comics appearances to the most recent film adaptations. A full Vice article from April 2026 catalogued all confirmed Batsuits available in the game before launch. The TT Games developer blog specifically asks players, "I wonder what your favourite suit is going to be," which suggests the team is proud of the collection and knows that for a certain type of Batman fan, the suit showcase alone justifies significant playtime in the Batcave. The Legacy of the Dark Knight Xbox Wire post, which TT Games published to highlight some of their own favourite Easter eggs and gameplay moments, contains a line that deserves to be quoted because of how funny it is. Lead designer Matthew Wood, describing the game's new combat system and the takedown animations, says his personal favourite is when Batman uses a bat-themed frying pan to whack an enemy on the head. He follows this with the phrase, "Holy non-stick, Batman," which is a reference to the 1966 Adam West Batman's habit with prefacing exclamations with "Holy, noun, Batman." The existence of a bat-themed frying pan takedown in Legacy of the Dark Knight tells you a great deal about the game's design philosophy and tone. This is a game that takes Batman seriously enough to include detailed actor likeness skins, recreate specific scenes from major Batman films, and reference deep comic book lore for environmental storytelling. It's also a game that includes a bat-themed frying pan as a combat tool, and thinks this is funny enough that the lead designer chose it as his highlight. Both of these things can be true, and in fact they're both true simultaneously, which is part of what makes the game work. The focus bar system that feeds into these takedowns is also worth explaining because it connects the comedy of the frying pan to actual game mechanics. You build focus through combat and traversal, specifically by using the boost into glide movement that also charges the focus bar for subsequent encounters. A full focus bar enables a free opening takedown in the next combat encounter. So, the frying pan, which sounds like a joke, is the reward for playing the traversal system well. The system that enables the silliest possible Batman weapon is the same system that rewards skilled movement through Gotham City. TT Games hid real game design inside the bit about the frying pan. In my opinion, that's good work, bro. And that, friends, is the list. Or at least a substantial portion of it, because the full list of facts in Legacy of the Dark Knight runs to well over 50 confirmed entries, and the community is still finding more. IGN's Matt Purslow catalogued 48 of them within days of launch, and the Bam Smack Pow team went past 50, and between those two counts, you have everything from the 1966 shark repellent bat spray to a missing cat poster mocking a 2004 film, to a frying pan named after the Caped Crusader to the Batman Begins typo that Michael Caine posted on Twitter in 2024. That's a range of references that spans 60 years of Batman history, several centuries of Scottish sketch comedy, and at least one horror video game franchise about animatronic restaurant mascots. If you're sleeping, I hope this video of ours got you there comfortably. If you're not, go check out our video on Batman Telling Tales, which is on your screen right now. Also, please leave a like, subscribe, and drop a comment telling us which Easter egg surprised you the most. Our team worked hard to track all of these down, and we want to know if you spotted any before watching this video. See you guys in the next one. Good night, and goodbye.